Hello, class. I am here just to go over some previous assignments as well as this week's discussion board on Rob Bell's chapter. So I want to go over some of the stuff you guys have done up to this point, and then go over this week's discussion. So first of all, let me go over the stuff to actually, you know what? No, I'm going to go over the discussion board first because I was just looking at that and I was a little disappointed at what I'm seeing so far. So let me flip over to that really quick. Okay, as you can see down here, this is the discussion this week that many of you have already started doing. Reading the chapter well, you have to do this. Click this article and you're going to read this article here, and then you're going to read Rob Bell, and then you're going to critique it. So having read that, discuss the strengths and weaknesses of the speaker in light of the principles set forth there. You guys so far are doing a terrible job, and you're not going to get full credit for this. You guys are saying very weak things. I'll give an example, and this isn't to like call out anything negative that you guys no one's saying anything necessarily wrong. You're just not getting the point. This is not just like a casual discussion board. I want you to use this guidelines thing to show how you have digested that entire chapter by Bell through this. And you guys are giving very casual responses. For instance, you're kind of casually saying, I think that the speaker uses his comparison of the two sons very well, and there's a sharp distinction between the two brothers. And I think the speaker did a good job highlighting the fact that the father shows love to both sons. On the other hand, the speaker seemed to spend a lot of time on the small and minute details of the parable. He continually spoke of the party and of the fact that it was always going on, when in the text that doesn't seem to be the main point of the parable. The speaker also seems not to say as much about the younger son, even though the bulk of the text is about the younger. He focuses much more sharply on the older. Okay, that may or may not be true. Those aren't wrong things, but that doesn't give me any evidence that you've read this. And many of you so far are saying that sort of thing. So I'm not trying to pinpoint that one person. That content itself is fine. I want you to go much more beyond that. I want you to show dynamics of filtering through. Okay, did he do a good job of understanding the setting of the parable, the historical setting? No one mentioned any of that. The cultural setting, uncover the need that prompted the parable, analyze the structure and the details of the parable. You guys are not talking about that at all. So talk to me about the structure and details of the parable. If you're going to talk about something, either he did it, either you can see the structure of his parable and he did a good job of that, and you can compliment, would be a positive, or he didn't do that, or at least it didn't seem he had recognized the structure and details of the parable, and then you would state that. What's the central truth of the parable and its relationship to the kingdom? You guys don't seem to be talking about that at all. At all. I mean, that's the main point of this whole article here is the relationship to the kingdom, the central truth, how it ties back to the kingdom. I don't see you guys asking these questions and answering them through what Rob Bell said. So no one is mentioning things like what terms are repeated in the parable, which are not, upon what does the parable dwell, what is the main contrast found in the parable, what comes at the end of the. You guys don't seem to be asking this. This is not a real this discussion board needs to take some time, and I need to see that you took some time on it. Again, the relationship to the kingdom is huge, so read this over again if you haven't read it yet, and I need to see that in your response. Respond to the intended appeal of the parable. Ultimately, what was Bell trying to say through this parable, and through what you see here is outlining how to find the main core idea of a parable and tying it to the kingdom. Did Rob Bell do that or not? So I'm not seeing any of that. You guys are not spending near enough time on this discussion board and giving arguments for that. So you're going to get slashed pretty good on that if you don't rectify it. But there's still time, my friends. That's why I'm posting this right now. So please go in and do that and do a much better job with your next posts. Or many of you haven't posted yet, so please do that on your first posts. Now, going back to the assignments that you've done so far. We've even graded more things than this. I mean, we're completely up to speed on grading. So applaud us and make sure that you're when you do your course evaluation, then you keep that in mind. Anyway, the background summary, the notes, and then the narrative analysis. Everyone has gotten that in. No one has been late, I don't think, on that. So I'm going to show you some good examples of that. Just because I think that that is sometimes helpful. So I was trying to hide people's names, but I'm using these as good examples. So let me do that really quick. I'm going to try to hide the name here, but if you find out who it is, I'm complimenting the person, so it's not that big a deal. This is what most of you did well on this, and you can see that we didn't slash off on too many. We weren't too picky on it, but the Philippians introduction by Silva. This was a good introduction. There was a works cited page with 10 solid sources there at the end, but ultimately this person did a good job of arguing from the point of Silva. Silva's introduction identifies the many disputes and viewpoints of Paul's letter to the Philippians. Silva begins by giving more context to the storyline surrounding Philippians. But Silva chooses to go with the traditional view because he sees no reason to believe that Paul couldn't have been in Rome simply because of distance. So Silva contends that the main opposition to Paul was Jewish believers who were threatening the Philippians, similar to those who were preaching another gospel to the Galatians. So this student seems to really gather and understand the arguments that Silva himself is making in this summary. And then the critique here at the end, he makes some good points. Silva believes too much energy has been spent on the hymn found in Philippians, and because of it, people have often misinterpreted the main thrust of the letter. Not only this, but Silva argues that so much of the focus on rejoicing has caused many to feel that the church in Philippi is a model church, when in fact there is a clear evidence throughout the letter that this is not the case. Silva contends that the sanctification and unity of the two areas Paul most wants to address. So again, this person, whether it's accurate, whether I would agree with this person or not, doesn't really matter as much as I'm seeing this person interacting with Silva, both in a positive and a critical way. And so that means this student is learning to think for themselves. They're filtering Silva through the other elements that they know of Philippians. And overall, just a really excellent job of interacting with a 2-page summary, which is what you're supposed to do on Silva's introduction to Philippians. So really good job on that. Now I want to show you the notes, an example of the notes, the Klein notes. And this person, did a good job, just in terms of glancing here, if you want to glance through kind of the type of dynamic they had over here. And then when going through these notes, obviously this is what most of you did a good job with, filling in all the information. I mean, it was really just regurgitating a lot of details here, but some people left stuff blank, or they couldn't find it and give up on it. This person overall did a really good job with it. And if you were missing anything here, you can just pause the video as long as you had a big enough screen. I know it's a little blurry when you watch it through YouTube, but you can go in and see some of the answers if you were missing any. But yeah, good job with that overall. This person did, as did most of you, to be honest with you. So yeah, really good job with the notes, and that's about what it's supposed to look like. On the narrative analysis, now we're getting into these narrative analysis questions, or these different format for these next ISA assignments. But this was on Genesis 22, the Abraham account. We weren't relating those of you that were on campus. I know there was only a handful of you, but those of you that were on campus for the Spring on Campus week, we went over that in class, this Abraham story and account. So I might touch on that a little bit here, but ultimately that was not the intent of going over that on campus. That was just to use Genesis 22 because I like Genesis 22 as a hermeneutical example. But I did want to touch on, in terms of this narrative analysis, what this person did well. And again, most of you did a pretty good job. Ultimately, that first question was discuss the plot of the narrative. So we're wanting to see those dynamics of plot, historical, the setting, the characters, and that sort of thing, which this person did a good job with. And then describe the characters in Genesis 22 according to the categories in Klein and the course notes. So you've got that protagonist, hero, agent, antagonist dynamic, the foil. And so here the only possible foil I can see would be Isaac's questioning why a lamb to sacrifice was not with them while traveling because it elevated Abraham's certainty. I don't know if I would say that would be the foil, but at least I can see that person processing the dynamics of character. The goal when you're interpreting scripture isn't that you identified all the characters appropriately. It's just that when you're using narrative, using these literary tools such as a character analysis is very helpful in doing a narrative analysis of a biblical text. So I want to at least see evidence that you're understanding what a protagonist, antagonist, hero, agent, foil sort of character is, and how those roles might fit into this story. So here the protagonist, this person argued God is ultimately the story's protagonist, as he is an active role, provides and blesses Abraham. Antagonist, the historical account lacks a true antagonist. I mean, you can even make you can make arguments that Abraham's faith or the doubting God, what he said, could be an antagonist sort of thing, good versus evil. The fact that we're in a fallen world, this is a process of God partnering with man and commissioning him to bring about his purposes in the earth. Hero, Abraham acts as the hero of the story. At the same time, one of the things I'm going to say that in a second. There's, it's interesting that Abraham gets put as the hero of the story. He certainly is admonished by God for being faithful. There's some question marks that we should have about this whole account that I'll talk about in a second. But let's go to the elements of time and what portions of the narrative go by faster than others. What this means is, let's just go around what this person was mentioning. There's a quick turnaround each time the Lord gives a command to Abraham. True, following the Lord's command, verse 3. So Abraham rose early in the morning, showing that he immediately responded to the call. That's good. So at the beginning of this narrative is, the Lord is telling him to go, and he immediately goes the next day. And these things like on the third day, this student points out, is good. That's definitely an element of time that shows how long things took. Encounters with God and his angels go by slower as we read the dialogue. They cover multiple verses. So those are also good. It's picking up on like how much time, how many verses were spent on certain things. So you're picking up on that, on what things go by faster versus slower. Not only do we sense the flow of time in this passage, but something can also be said of the time spent describing portions. In the conclusion of Genesis 22, 4 verses are used to mention God's blessing on Abraham by outlining some of the genealogy. Yes. What I want to jump to, dialogue. This person did a good job. I'm not going to go over too much of that because I only have a couple minutes left on this video, and I don't want to miss that. Let me see. Sorry, a little glitch there. But I want to go down to the interpretation of the passage. Include a statement of the main point in the narrative and the reasons for your decision. Okay. This person and most of you, we gave pretty much full marks to if you say something about Israel. Right? The overarching theme of Genesis 22 is hence God's provision to the faithful. Although much can be said in regards to Abraham's example of good faith, the chapter ultimately serves to extend God's promises to Israel through illustrating his love for Abraham. The story of Abraham's testing also foreshadows the love of God sending his son to die as Abraham was asked to sacrifice his beloved son. That's the very common application of this account. The preachers love to tie this into foreshadowing of Jesus, almost to a fault, where we just see it as a story that serves as an image of Jesus. But I want to briefly go to Genesis 22 real quickly if I can, if it'll let me. I think I kept it open here. Okay. If I'm in Genesis 22 right now, if you go down to this verse, by myself I've sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring whatever. This is meant to be held in tension with Genesis 12. This is the original thing that was conditional. Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you. So there was a condition here. And if you don't understand that all of a sudden in Genesis 22, because of Abraham's faithfulness, God is now declaring that that conditional promise is now unconditional. It means that you have kind